The seminar is about the events from last week, the massacre in New Zealand at the mosque, and basically Islamophobia, hate, and the rise of white supremacism. So our guest speakers today are Dr. Yusuf Khatwan. Most of you know him obviously from your courses. Those who don't know Dr. Yusuf Khatwan, he's a lecturer here at Istanbul Sahabbatin Sami University. He's also the coordinator of Silk Road Civilization Research and Application Center and a board member at the Istanbul Research Center. The other guest speaker here is Professor Dr. Sami Al-Arian, who is the director of Center for Islam and Global Affairs and a professor of Public Affairs at ISU. Now, originally we had planned that we will show first about 30 minutes of a documentary that is basically about the, it's a documentary about another massacre that occurred a few years ago in Canada, Quebec. However, we will proceed to this documentary only later because Dr. Yusuf has to leave earlier. Hence, we will start our discussion straight with him and then continue with the documentary and the discussion with Professor Sami Al-Arian. Now, first of all, Dr. Yusuf, many thanks for accepting the invitation to join us today. I would like to ask you, what is your general impression about the massacre on Friday, of last week's massacre in Christchurch, New Zealand? And how would you evaluate this in the global context of Islamophobia and rise of white supremacy? Yes.
Evet arkadaşlar. Well, it is outrageous. You can I can speak this, yeah? I can go where it goes.
Yeah. Okay. The floor is yours, basically. Yes.
Well, it is not accidental, you see. In my opinion, it is not accidental. I was expecting that kind of horror story, yeah? More than that, I am expecting it actually. Much more than that. Because we are living in a world which is dominated a lawless, illegal, in my opinion, in appearance legal, but in reality it is illegal, lawless world system, world order. We are living in this kind of world. It is based on in theory. It is based on the theory of human rights, democracy, law, rule of law. But it is practicing. In reality, it is. It produces the most horrendous stories. Look, it is the result of the Western white supremacy. We call it white supremacy. It is not enough, you see, to describe this phenomenon, a white supremacy. It is actually Western civilization is based on the denial of God, and in place of God, replacing the human being. Human being what they call humanism. Actually, it is creating a kind of God which is humanity. Look, it is not. It is the most rigid. It is the most rigid violence, ontological violence. I call it philosophically. It is an ontological violence. When you replace human as a god, then you are just playing God, yeah? Playing a role as a god. You see, it is a caricature. It's a caricature. Well, this kind of violence actually the result of Western philosophical framework of human, of God, of nature, and of the world. It is the result of this. You see, we see the violence against God. We see the violence against nature. We see the violence against all the civilizations. When you look at the history of civilizations, you can see this. History of humanity. Yeah? History of humanity, you can see this. There is no one single civilization which colonized all the civilizations. Colonized all the civilizations and produced a kind of violence that became impossible for all other civilizations live in peace, as itself. You see, Chinese civilization. Can we speak of the existence of Chinese civilization, Indian civilization, Japanese civilization, Latin America? We call Latin American civilizations. Who can say that Latin American civilizations live alive? Who can say this? Why is that? All the Latin American civilization. Why we call it Latin American civilization? Why we call it Latin and American? They are not Latin. They are not American. They have no names. Their names. It is the violence of Western civilization. It is the ontological, philosophical violence resulted in political, economical, and cultural violence. Look, you cannot see any kind of, you cannot see any example that is like Western civilization, that is produced that kind of violence like Western civilization. All the civilization. Arnold Toynbee, one of the most important historians of the 20th century, he said that within the 300 years of 26 civilizations, we killed 16 of them. Only 9 civilizations fossilized. 16 civilization is dead, are dead, and 9 civilizations are fossilized by the Western hegemony, by the Western violence. There is no one simple example like that before Western hegemony in human history. You cannot show one example, yeah? Just one single example that produced a violence against all human civilizations, against all humanity, against all other cultures. When you look at Islamic civilizations, for instance, Islamic civilization, examples of Islamic civilizations, Abbasid, Egyptian example, or Andalusian example, you can see all the cultures, all the religions, all the civilizations living together in peace and harmony. Western philosophy, Western Christian philosophy, Western Jewish philosophy, or Jewish philosophy became, well, actually, became its peak, its rise in its history is its peak. You see, Maimonides. You look at the Maimonides, yeah. Look at the Maimonides and other Christian philosophy, Christian philosophers, and all the Renaissance examples, Renaissance attempts. Three Renaissances, Western Renaissances, we know, yeah? Three Renaissances. Early Renaissance, 9th century. Early Renaissance, 12th century. And late Renaissance, 15th century. All Renaissances actually are the results of the Islamic civilization. Look, I don't want to take your time. What I'm saying is that the Western hegemony, particularly created by Westphalian order in 1648. It created a kind of order, world order. What we call is a European world order. It finished 1945 after the Second World War. 300 years. It is a short term in terms of human history. Yeah, it's a short term. So what kind of civilizational practice produced Westphalian European world order? We lost all the human experiences. We lost all the civilizational experiences. All the civilizations are dead. They are not using their framework of God, of truth, of human being. They are using in all their problems. When they try to solve their problems, they are using Western perspectives, yeah, Western frameworks, Western human understanding, Western understanding of God, Western understanding of humanity, Western understanding of economical practice and theory. They are using all Western perspectives. Well, they lost their identity. They are not living. That's why this kind of New Zealand killings are not what we say are not accidental. What I said, yeah, are not accidental. It is difficult to say this, but I'm expecting much bigger than this kind of horror stories. They are coming. We have to be ready. But we cannot say that we have to take the revenge of this horrendous story. We cannot take revenge. That is our power. That is our power. Okay? We cannot take the revenge. It is not the practice of Muslims. You cannot show that kind of practice in our history. Yeah? We cannot see it. When you look at Hazreti Peygamber, yeah? you can see it. When you look at the Sahabbatin's conquest of Qudus, when you look at the Bosnian war, you can see that the war law, war principles are in practice every time in our history. You cannot touch women, children, religious men. Okay, you cannot touch it. When you actually come across Srebrenica, an event of Srebrenica, you cannot take advantage. This is our power. This is our power. That's why Western powers are actually fear. That's why I am against the concept of Islamophobia. It is not an Islamophobia. It is the hate of Islam. It is the hate of Islam. It is not the Islamophobia. It's a wrong concept. I have to finish, yeah? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Yusuf needs to go right now, but we do have the documentary for you to show first, and then we will continue the discussion. Actually, I find it a pity that Dr. Yusuf is leaving so soon, because we would have had a nice discussion about the definition of Islamophobia, most probably. But anyway, all right, so 25 minutes of the documentary. Yes, all right. So now we're going to show you the documentary, which is titled Your Last Walk in the Mosque. And as I told you before, this is based on another massacre that occurred in Quebec, Canada, on January 29th in 2017, around Isha prayer times. And so there was a gunman who entered the mosque and started shooting, very similarly to this what happened in New Zealand. And 6 people were killed and 19 were injured. Actually, I just today I found a news article that tells us that only recently the shooter has been sentenced to life in prison in Canada. So he got 40 years of prison time, basically, so he has the possibility of parole after 40 years. Even though the prosecution had asked for 150 years, but the judge had said that the verdict should not be a revenge, so they kept it at 40 years. Now, I'm not going to tell any more about the shooter himself, because obviously we do not want to give these people any more fame that they have already gotten through the media. However, we are now going to focus on the narratives of the victims. The documentary is in French, but it has English subtitles, so inshallah everybody is going to be able to understand the documentary itself. Thank you.
Elle a quoi? Elle est égale à 100 tonnes. Elle t'a sauvé. Elle a toujours été à côté de toi. Jusqu'à aujourd'hui.
Chaque jour. «
12 heures par jour à côté de toi. Elle restait 12 heures par jour à côté de toi. 12.
Tous les jours. Alhamdulillah.
خديجة ثابتة من تونس.
Le cerveau, le cœur, la respiration, c'est le plus important. Allah t'a donné le plus important pour nous. T'as 3 enfants. Alhamdulillah. Ils sont venus ici.
Le bilan est lourd. 6 morts, 8 blessés, dont certains dans un état très sérieux. En pleine nuit, le Premier ministre du Québec intervient devant la presse.
Nous partageons tous et toutes le sentiment d'horreur, d'incrédulité qui nous a envahis lorsqu'on a appris cette nouvelle. Je pense qu'on se dit tous spontanément, chez nous à Québec. Spontanément, chez nous à Québec. Tous et toutes, le sentiment d'horreur, d'incrédulité qui nous a envahis lorsqu'on a appris cette nouvelle. Je pense qu'on se dit tous spontanément, chez nous à Québec.
C'était la prière de l'Aïcha, c'était un dimanche. Donc on arrivait à la prière du Aïcha et en général, il n'y a rien qui se fait de spécial dans la mosquée. Après la prière, en général, on se réunit et avec les amis qui arrivent, plus pour socialiser un peu, de discuter un peu, plutôt de se rencontrer. Donc, vendredi, samedi, dimanche, en général, c'était des journées où on essaye de venir le plus pour rencontrer nos amis et d'échanger un peu. Donc, c'était ça. Effectivement, j'étais là le 29 janvier.
La prière n'était pas si longue. Puis après la prière, après le tasbih et tout, j'ai rencontré le frère Asdin.
Une fois qu'on avait fini la prière, c'est à peu près vers 8h45, 7h50. C'est ça, donc je faisais la prière de l'autre côté et je voyais des amis qui, en général, ils s'accordent sur les murs. Il y en a qui sont partis, il y en a qui restent. Donc, s'apprêtait à se rencontrer. Mais à un moment donné, là, on entendait des coups de feu. Des coups de feu qui venaient de l'extérieur et c'était quelque chose d'anormal, de bizarre. Deux de nos frères guinéens, Ibrahima et Tan, qui ont fini la prière et allaient rentrer chez eux. Donc, ça a commencé par eux. Ils étaient atteints par les balles et ils étaient déjà morts quand ils commençaient à rentrer. Et là, quand ils commençaient à rentrer, le monde dit ça, lui il rentre et on entendait des coups de feu. Donc il y avait un feu nourri et c'était la panique. Là, ça a commencé la panique.
Là, j'ai commencé à reculer vers le mihrab, là où il y a le minbar. Le frère Asdin n'a pas reculé, il est resté là où il est. Après ça, on a commencé à entendre les coups de feu à l'intérieur de la mosquée. Le frère Asdin, j'ai entendu le frère Asdin qui demandait au frère d'essayer de s'interposer contre le tireur, vu qu'il avait fini son chargeur. Il allait pour s'interposer et le tireur était assez vite pour changer son chargeur. Il n'a pas pu se rendre à lui et c'est là qu'il a reçu les coups de feu.
Non, le temps qu'il n'y a pas de balle, il n'y a rien, on essayait, moi et le frère Asdin, on essayait de courir pour le maîtriser. Là. Mais mon frère Asdin, il a avancé à la porte ici. Mais c'est trop tard, le gars, il a retourné, il a donné des balles. Il a tombé, moi j'ai rien à faire, j'ai retourné vers mes frères, là. J'ai reçu la première balle, et la deuxième, j'étais là-bas, j'ai caché juste ma tête, j'ai reçu la deuxième balle après.
قلت لك الاخ عزدين كان متخبي لهنا ووقت اللي كمل الشارج الاولى quand il a terminé la première charge il a accouru pour l'attraper. Il a accouru comme ça وصل لهنا والآخر déjà il a chargé. Il a reculé ou il a frappé ici.
C'est après ça que, quand le frère Asdin est tombé, que le tireur a commencé à tirer à l'intérieur de la mosquée. Moi, j'ai essayé de m'abriter dans le mihrab avec les frères. Mais vu que c'était moi le plus proche, c'est là que j'ai reçu les coups de feu. La seule chose que j'ai pas réalisé, qu'il y avait une deuxième balle qui a touché mon genou. Ça, je ne l'ai pas réalisé tout de suite, mais la balle qui a touché mon abdomen, je l'ai senti.
Dans le fond, moi, je m'apprêtais à aller rencontrer un des amis qui était mort, c'est le frère Khalid, rahimahullah. C'est le professeur à l'université Laval. Quand on se regardait, on souriait. Fait que moi, je m'apprêtais à aller le voir. Après, quand les coups de feu commençaient, c'était la panique. Fait que il y en a comme le monde commençait, les frères qui étaient là, commençait à courir dans tous les sens. Et il y en a qui voulaient sortir, mais par ce côté-là, mais il y avait des tirs. Donc à un moment donné, il rebroussait chemin et allait au mihrab.
Oh, il est levé, là. De loin, parce que moi là, et lui, il n'a pas avancé, lui, il est juste devant la porte. À la rentrée, il était là.
Moi, de mon côté, comme je m'apprêtais à partir de rencontrer nos amis, je me suis réfugié là sur cette poutre. Et j'avais un angle de vision, donc j'ai pas mal vu. J'en ai vu pas mal le tueur est exécuté avec un sang-froid exceptionnel. Nos frères qui sont venus pour la prière. Donc je l'ai vu de mes propres yeux quand il a... C'est ça. Donc, c'est ça, il avait le frère Ahmed qui était là. Et il a frappé à bout portant. Il y avait le frère Abou Bakr qui était dans notre poutre. La même chose. Et après, quand il est revenu. Entre-temps, il commençait à tirer de ce côté-là et le frère Khaled, le professeur, c'était la panique, il voulait se réfugier dans le mihrab. Et c'est là qu'il a été touché. Il était tombé directement devant le mihrab. Un autre frère, Abdelkarim, un ami, un très bon ami à moi aussi, c'était la dernière personne que j'avais vue parce qu'il a fini la prière, on s'est serré la main. Et c'est comme si il allait sortir, mais à un moment donné, il a rencontré le tueur. Et Abdelkarim, il a fait le tour parce qu'il y avait des champs de tir. Il est allé juste derrière moi, il a été tombé par terre. Il a été touché par des balles aussi.
Il y a aussi l'histoire d'un frère parmi les rescapés, parce qu'il y avait la fille d'un des blessés, le frère Nizar. Sa fille était témoin du drame. Et son père, quand il était blessé, il est tombé au milieu ici, au milieu de la mosquée. Et sa fille, elle a voulu courir vers son père. Et c'est ce frère qu'il a attrapé, il a mis sous son corps en arrière là-bas. Il l'a protégé avec son corps.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y avait aussi? Il y avait une petite fille, la fille de notre imam, la fille de l'imam Nizar. Elle a paniqué. C'est normal qu'elle avait son tir, elle était venue avec son père, elle se faufilait. Elle a passé devant moi, je l'ai pris. Je l'ai pris et on s'est réfugié derrière le pilier. Alhamdoulilah, elle a été saine et sauve. Donc, c'est ça. Du point où j'étais, j'avais tout vu. C'était...
Scène désolante. C'était très fort. Parce que tu voyais les mares de sang partout. Il y avait devant le tapis de prière de l'imam. Il y avait ici, il y avait dans ce coin-là. Il y avait à l'entrée là-bas. Et un peu partout dans le tapis. Il y avait aussi beaucoup de traces de balles. Sur les murs, nous, on les a rectifié les murs, on a arrangé les choses, mais il y avait des traces de balles partout.
Après, c'est à l'hôpital que je me suis réveillé, peut-être à peu près un mois plus tard. Ouais.
C'est un sentiment mitigé, dans le sens que tu es content de rencontrer ta famille, tes enfants, mais aussi, il faut penser que d'autres n'ont pas eu cette chance. Les hommes qui n'ont pas pu rentrer, que leurs épouses et leurs enfants ont tenté de les appeler toute la nuit, alors qu'ils étaient dans la morgue ou étaient dans la mosquée. Moi, c'est tout ça, c'est un sentiment mitigé.
C'était une nuit d'angoisse, très très dure pour toute ma famille, mes enfants, et aussi, je dirais, une famille élargie ici, c'est-à-dire les voisins, les amis qui étaient avec moi. Et nous avons passé quasiment la nuit à le chercher dans tous les hôpitaux de la ville. Mais c'est ça, c'est seulement le lendemain quand on nous a appris la nouvelle qu'on n'avait plus d'espoir en fait. Pendant toute la nuit, nous avions quand même un espoir, un mince espoir de le trouver blessé, de le trouver quelque part. Malheureusement, ce n'était pas le cas. Il n'y avait pas d'écho.
Et, alhamdoulilah, la femme de Khaled, masha'Allah, c'est une personne courageuse. Aussi la femme d'Abdelkarim et toutes les femmes de nos frères, les frères guinéens. Tanou, Ibrahima, la femme d'Azdin, la femme d'Abou Bakr, masha'Allah. Ils ont été courageux.
J'ai deux grands enfants. En fait, j'ai une fille de 28 ans et un garçon de 25 ans. J'ai aussi un petit jeune de 13 ans. Mais mes grands enfants, il y a un d'entre eux, mon fils est allé à l'hôpital. Nous avons appris juste avant que les grands blessés ont été dirigés vers l'hôpital de l'Enfant Jésus. Alors mon fils est allé là-bas, directement demander des nouvelles de son papa. Et ma fille, elle était avec moi en fait. Et ensemble, nous avons essayé de voir, de téléphoner en fait dans tous les autres hôpitaux.
Juste entendre ma mère crier, ça m'a bouleversée. Elle n'avait pas besoin de parler, je savais très bien qu'est-ce qu'on venait juste de lui dire.
Je ne peux pas parler de l'événement. Je peux parler de tout ce qu'on a vécu, mais pas ça. Je vais te dire, tu sais, je pleure, mais c'est pas parce que je te remercie pas. Au fond de moi, je pleure, je sais, je pleure. C'est parce qu'il n'est pas là, mais vraiment, je suis vraiment fière. Je le remercie vraiment, c'est une fierté pour moi. Je remercie Dieu de me l'avoir donné comme mari et d'avoir fait en sorte que j'ai eu des enfants avec lui. Je le remercie vraiment. Vraiment, il me disait merci, mais aujourd'hui, c'est moi qui lui dis merci. J'espère que Dieu va lui donner la paix du cœur. Qu'il lui donne le paradis. Le tous. Je suis vraiment fière. Je pleure, je sais, je pleure, je le sais. Mais je me dis, Dieu, tu sais, au fond de moi, je pleure. C'est pas parce qu'il est décédé, c'est parce qu'il n'est pas là. Parce que je suis vraiment fière qu'il est parti comme ça. C'est une fierté pour moi d'être sa femme, vraiment.
Thank you for being with us today. We're meeting
try to understand the phenomena that has taken over in the past few years, that many people are puzzled about what's going on. In 2011, we had a 28-year-old showing at a youth camp, basically massacring 77 people. These victims were not even Muslims, they were Norwegians. He wrote over a 1,500-page document, which he called European Declaration of Independence, basically lamenting and blaming Muslims about what's going on in the world, and particularly about the white race and Europe. In that document, he mentioned many names. Many people may not understand or know about these people, but for those who study the phenomenon of Islamophobia, and basically Islamophobia does have a meaning, does have a definition, and it means the intense or irrational hatred or fear of Muslims and Islam. It's another form of racism and Islamophobia. Andres Breivik, that was his name, he mentioned the name, for instance, of Robert Spencer 64 times. Robert Spencer is a very well-known person who hates Islam and Muslims and basically have waged a crusade, have waged a battle against Islam and Muslims for many years now, and is being funded by many institutions and organizations. A lot of them have Zionist connections. Another person he mentioned was Daniel Pipes, another person who's made it a career to attack Islam and Muslims, and has established actually many forums and websites and organizations and have been funding them that have nothing to do but try to attack Islam at its core, including the Book of Muslims, including the Prophet of Islam, including all kinds of practices. He also mentioned Pamela Geller and Ayaan Hirsi Ali. All these names, what bring them together and put them in the same field is that they have been the voices of Islamic hatred in the world since 9/11 and even before. I've witnessed many of these ones started after the collapse of the Soviet Union back in the late 80s, when this started, when the West was looking for another enemy. They have been at odds with the Soviet Union, with communism, since the end of World War II. And after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the new nemesis, the new enemy, has become Islam and Muslims. Professor Kaplan mentioned earlier about Western civilization. There are a lot of good that we can get from Western civilization, but also it's the same civilization that has produced mass murder, that, as he mentioned. Over 200 million people were killed in the last century. 55 million in World War II, 20 million in World War I. Millions perished in Siberia during the Soviet Union, as well as in other parts of the world. If you go back another 2 centuries, anywhere between 65 and 90 million indigenous people in North America were perished also when the white man colonized the continent. It is not, we're not here to denounce race. We're here to point out that this disease called white supremacy is something that has to be taken seriously because of the damage it's doing around the world. What we just witnessed here are some images and scenes of real pain where communities in their own houses of worship had to suffer and have to endure. Not only Muslims. A few months ago, Robert Bowers attacked a Jewish synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and massacred 11 Jews in their own synagogue while praying and celebrating that evening. A year earlier, we saw another person, Dina Roof, who massacred 8 African Americans in their own church while also worshiping. So this has been a phenomenon. The only threat, whether they kill people in a mosque, or kill people in a synagogue, or kill people in a church, is that they all vouch for white supremacy. The latest episode that Brenton Tarrant has undertaken last week was just another step towards that direction, in which he massacred 50 people and had a manifesto called The Great Replacement. It's another read of this twisted ideology. What he was basically lamenting is the fact that from his twisted logic, somehow the white race, the European race, is being replaced with others, and particularly by Muslims. This person actually has traveled throughout the world, not only through Europe, but also through the Muslim world, including here in Turkey. There are a lot of references in that manifesto about Turkey and about the battles that took place 4 or 5 centuries ago, whether in Europe or in other places, by which he was praising those military leaders that he thought stood up to the Ottomans. In other words, he thought that Islam is the challenge that must be overcome for the white race to stay, because this mentality only sees things in terms of race. Now, to understand Islamophobia, I just want to make some observations and then we can have a discussion. The first observation is that they look at Islam and Muslims in a monolithic way. To them, everyone who is brown-skinned, actually, could be a Muslim. So they could attack a Sikh or could they attack a Hindu, thinking somehow that they are different, therefore they cannot make the difference between a Muslim and non-Muslim. So all races somehow become Muslims. In the past, actually, before modern times, they were called Mohammedans. That was the old Islamophobia, that anyone who was not Christian at the time was called Mohammedan. They wouldn't even dignify them with the word Muslim. So they treat all Muslims the same, ignoring all the different diversities that exist among Muslims throughout the world. As you know, Islam is the religion that actually has every race and every ethnicity and every language embodied in it, where Muslims do not make that differentiation. They consider all of them as one ummah, one nation. They don't look at each other as races, rather as systems, as beliefs. The other observation is that Islamophobia has different forms and nature. Some of it is very violent, as we've seen, and some of it is very subtle, where people could be treated unfairly or looked at in an undignified way. This could be in different forms, whether by the dress, especially with women, or by other forms. So that kind of racism that takes place in a subtle, sometimes not so obvious way, is something that people have to deal with, especially when you're living in non-Muslim societies. As you see, that's how they see the threat. Especially, and you could see that in the manifesto of this killer. He said that the ones that he hates the most are the converts, because he thinks that they are betraying. Sorry, Linda. That they are betraying their race. That somehow, if they embrace a faith, that in his twisted mind, a betrayal of his own race. The other observation is that most of the Islamophobia that we could see today affects women and children, because they are the most vulnerable within the Muslim community. They are susceptible because they are easy targets. Children are being bullied in schools, especially when again talking about when Muslims are minorities in different places around the world. We see Islamophobia in different forms, whether it's in school, at work, in the streets. It has become commonplace, where in the past it was less so. This atmosphere that has been created, especially after the tragic events of 9/11, 2001, has made Muslims fearful of speaking out, give them chilling effects. And the real aim of this is to exclude them from any kind of a seat at the table, any public issues, to exclude them from participating in forums, in organizations, in politics, in public affairs, in a way that would be very difficult for them to engage because they are always looked at with suspicion. You could see that today, for instance, when a couple of people, Muslims, were elected in Congress, and how they are being attacked viciously every single day. They want to put the Muslims on the defensive. There was actually a publication that was published about 12 years ago titled Building Moderate Muslim Networks. It was a study about 150 pages written by 4 scholars, a historian, political scientist, a social scientist, and anthropologist. And in it, they tried to redefine what a Muslim is. They said there are different kinds of Muslims. There is the radical, militant type Muslim, the ISIS type, and they said these people are not many, these people are few, they will never be converted, and they will never have real effect. And then they have the conservative type, and then they have the people who are more enlightened, who embraces the concept of democracy, but they also embrace the religion. There is the secular type, the liberal type, and there is the last one is the non-practicing, totally secular type. Before that, the liberal. So the aim is to how we can turn the Muslims into, instead of liberal, they have the word moderate. And everybody embraces the word moderate. But when you look at the 15 different criteria they set on the word moderate, it becomes very difficult for any practicing Muslim or believing Muslim to fit that criteria. So the idea was how we can turn Muslims into becoming secularists. That's very difficult. So they tried to redefine the word. And what that made the effect, the impact of this is that those people who would embody this definition will be the ones celebrated in society. And anyone who embraces any kind of an Islamic criteria as defined, has been defined for hundreds, thousands of years, they will become excluded from that public debate. In other words, how to redefine what Islam and Muslims are. This is another form which is more dangerous kind of Islamophobia, by having the other defining who you are, what your beliefs are, and what you should embody. That puts Muslims on the defensive. And for the past 15 years, we've seen that over and over again, where it is the institutional Islamophobia that has taken place over the relationship within society, to rearrange who would be speaking for the Muslims, whether these are in European capitals, North America, or even beyond. We've seen that in many instances, for example, whether it's Trump or Obama or before that George W. Bush or Clinton or others, it has progressed and becomes a real problem facing Muslim minorities, where those leaders who were actually spokespersons for the Islamic community, they became more and more excluded. So the institutionalizations, when it becomes an institutionalized Islamophobia, that one becomes dangerous. That's when we have the effect of government policies, as well as the media, on how the public at large would look at Islamophobia. I want to show you some images. If we can have someone up there, someone there can put the Islamophobia images. Islamophobia images, it's called. I want to show you some examples of the effect of the media and how that's been exploited to the point where the effect and impact of the word, how we tie the word Islam and terrorism and radicalism and militant and so on and so forth, in the minds of the Westerners, in the mind of the other, and that how that feeds into the notion of white supremacism and exclusivism. In Australia, for example, in 2017, this guy was Australian, by the way, there were 3,000 articles on Islam and Muslims in very few publications. Out of these 3,000, there were 600 headlines, all of them negative. All 3,000 were negative on Islam and Muslims. That's about 8 per day. That's every other, about 600, that's every other day where someone is bombarded with these notions. If you look at what it says here, Muslim convert beheads Muslim in garden. The emphasis here that he is a Muslim and that he is a convert, not that he is a killer or a criminal. If you go to the next one, this is again how to put Islam and jihad again with the word evil. And you continue doing that. If we go to the next one, and here, for example, this is where it happened a few years ago. It was called the gunman. It was called the gunman. There was someone with a gun, without any tying him to anything else. You go to the next, and this is the Guardian. This is one of the friendly ones. Here, this angelic face, they call him the backpacker killer. This is a British tabloid. And they even give justification. The poor guy, his father died of cancer. Maybe that's the reason. Even though he murdered dozens of people. The blonde little boy, that's how it's being described. You go to the next one, the angelic boy. Look at this face, the angelic voice, almost like angels. And if you go to the next one and compare, this is the same paper. This guy on the left killed 50, and the other guy on the right killed 50. This is the maniac guy, a Muslim guy, and the other guy is angelic. They may have other reasons. If you go to the next one, now this is what the British, this is what the Westerners, and by the way, all these are Murdoch papers. And Murdoch owns most of the papers in Australia. And the largest one in the US, as well as the largest cable network, Fox. And by the way, the owner of about 15% of Fox is a Walid al-Talaq. So somehow Muslim money is being feeding into this Islamophobia. And look at all this, it's all about Muslim, Islam, Ramadan, halal, jihad. This is every single day that they are bombarded with this for year after year after year. That's a type of brainwashing that's taking place into these simple-minded people. Next one, you could see this is about immigrants. It's about, and all kinds of immigrants, Syrian immigrants, Iraqi immigrants, Kurdish immigrants, Bosnian immigrants. Every day that's being fed all the time. Next one. And so on. I mean, it just goes on and on. So this is basically the translates. A Muslim means terrorist, means radical, militant. You combine that World Trade Center, combine that with 9/11, Saddam, Qaeda. All these notions now are twisted in their minds. So this is an institutionalized type campaign that has been taking place. And at the end, my final comment is that this has to do with a geopolitical ends. There is a real objective behind this. In order to basically control the world, you have to pick your enemies and you try to control them by controlling the agenda. If Islam is going to be a challenge, if Islam and Muslims is going to challenge hegemony, whether this is in terms of political or otherwise, then they would have to redefine the situation, both in political terms as well as cultural, and especially in popular culture. White supremacism is basically the attempt of the individuals to speak out in trying to, in their minds, out of all these campaigns taking place, is to save what they think is Western civilization and what it represents. But the deeper Islamophobia is the Islamophobia that is trying to undermine the role of Islam in public life or the role of Islam worldwide in a way that where Islam could actually present itself in a way that is intended in a peaceful, engaging, in a cultural, civilizational way. That's what's being prevented, and that is through this deliberate campaign in order to demonize Islam and Muslims. But white supremacist is a tool that is being used both by politicians such as Trump and other right-wing and far-right parties in Europe and elsewhere, and in order also to paint Muslims into a corner where it will be very difficult for them actually to assert their identity and assert their political place, whether as citizens, useful citizens, or whether in their own communities like we have here, because these people also have their own allies within the Muslim world at large, that we could see they're trying to undermine the assertion of the Muslim identity in even Muslim majority countries, as we've seen through the counter-revolutionary forces that tried to abort what was called and named the Arab Spring. Let me stop here and we can open it for questions. But maybe we can, if we can show the coin. Can you put the YouTube, please? This is a poetry, very powerful poem that was said in 2016 in trying to compare what happened in the black churches in other places where massacres taking place with what happened when Muslims did them. And they didn't question the killers' identities, they didn't question their allegiance, they didn't call them terrorists, they were just trying to find all kinds of justification. They were deranged, they were mentally incapable, and I thought this was very powerful to assert and to show. Please, John.
On June 17, 2015, Dylan Ruff walked into a midweek Bible study. He sat and prayed with the church members before pulling out his gun, killing most, and allowing one to live. After the incident, he was found and arrested, peacefully. When Dylan Ruff killed 9 innocent black people, we did not question his God. He wore flags of apartheid Africa. We did not question his allegiance. He committed the crime alone. We did not question his people. When Adam Lanza shot a classroom full of first graders at Sandy Hook Elementary, we did not ask him to leave the country. When Timothy McVeigh killed 168 people in Oklahoma, we did not call this a crime against every American. When the KKK killed thousands of black people, while swearing to uphold Christian morality, we did not ask them to remove their robes. We did not call all Christians bigots. Do you see it? How we don't label all white men based on the sins of a few, do you see it? How we don't have to condemn a whole class of people based on the actions of some, do you see it? How all the names are different, how all the faces are different, how all the people are different, therefore we should not condemn all Muslims for the radicalism of a group. If you want to persecute ISIS, go ahead, but to persecute ISIS is to persecute those that gave them power, to persecute those that gave them power is to persecute the US government. Do your research. Islam is not synonymous with terror, it is literally submission, it is devotion, it is peace. Terrorism is actually prevented, and jihad does not mean holy war, it means struggle, it means survival, it means standing face to face with everything that wants to put you in the ground and choosing to be alive. Do your research and stop listening to CNN. Stop trading humanity for hypocrisy. Stop staring at Muslims in the airport. Stop letting your fear drag you into ignorance. Stop supporting billionaire Republicans who want to scare you into murdering the innocent customary greeting goes, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Wa alaikum assalam, and upon you be peace. Do you see it?
All right, many thanks, Dr. Sami. Would you like to sit here? Okay. I guess I have to leave this microphone with you. Does it work? Let's see. Are there any questions from the audience? We have about 10 minutes for questions and answers. I have no idea what you're trying to say. Anlamıyorum.
Mikrofon orada, arka.
Oh.
Arka.
Oh. Okay. No, I don't want to use that one. I want to use this one.
I have a microphone.
Everything's fine. Any questions? All right, I'm gonna come to you and give you the microphone.
Hocam, I would like to ask you a question about the last events, what you told us. So, while we're defining the Islamophobia, I think we're failing about the psychological way, because I'm feeling that if we are blaming the Christian as how they are calling us as a terrorist, so it's going to be a huge problematic while we are doing this kind of classification as a Muslim and the Turkish people, because after those events, while I was reading the old tweets in the Twitter, I saw plenty of tweets, who Christians like that, as blah blah blah, those kind of things. So from this perspective, I'm thinking that those kind of people has a disease, has something psychological problem in their mind. So it's not anymore ideological and sociological. This is sort of psychological disease that we have to solve it in this way, and we have to tell them what they are calling is what the ISIS is doing, how they are claiming that this is the terror. We should tell them this is the disease mind. So we are failing in this way that we are saying that they are radical, but what is the meaning of radical? So this is my question, that how we are failing in that field. So
I agree that what we have here is not a religious war. These are not Christians. Real Christians do not kill people. Real Christians who follow their religion, they do not kill people out of hatred or out of animosity. Most of these people, when you research their lives, they're usually not religious. Actually, Anders Breivik, even though he says at the beginning that he's Christian, his real faith is paganism. But it doesn't matter. Because also the real Christian faith does not call to kill.
The same way as real Muslim faith does not call for killing
people. ISIS, in a sense, is probably the mirror image of these people. When you hate people because of their faith, Islam does not teach us to hate people because of their faith. We don't hate people.
Muslims don't hate other people. You may hate certain acts, certain actions, but we're not taught to hate people because of their race, or because of their ethnicity, or because of their language, or because of their shape, or because of their color. None of that has anything to do with Islamic Muslims. I don't know if this microphone is working. When it comes to the issue of what is radical, this is it does not have a definition. It depends on who is defining it, who's talking about it. So when it comes to the West, we're talking about Western media in particular, and government. When you look at someone like Donald Trump, he would lump anybody who practices Islam as being radical. Anybody who has any kind of respect to Islam and Muslims it could be lumped into that definition. It could be called militant, terrorist, radical, extremist, all these definitions. To them are the same. And as I said, the most dangerous part of Islamophobia is the institutionalization of Islamophobia. When government policy becomes part of it, when you have a Muslim ban, for instance, when you have surveillance that is being sanctioned by government, where they can go to mosques and they can have cameras and they can have people who are basically informants inside the mosque, where they can target people because of their faith, as happened to hundreds of people in the US, for example. And when the media becomes the tool of the government for doing so, between the years of 95 and 2003, when I was a target of US government, one newspaper that we learned later, for example, that they were working with the government and trying to basically demonize me, they had like 1,500 articles from me. Just imagine, in 8 years, 1,500 articles for a professor at the university. That's almost 200 articles a year. That's almost more than one article a day that you'll mention somewhere. And some of it is headline, some of it is not. So it is this the dangerous part of Islamophobia. And then they start trying to dictate the words. You're a radical, you're an extremist, you're a terrorist, because that's what they're trying to paint you so that they can start to target you and then marginalize you and then try to get rid of you, because somehow they perceive you as a danger. And this is true when you have basic objectives that have to do with empire building, imperialism, Zionism. You have an overall geopolitical objective and goal that you're trying to achieve, and you're trying to silence the other side. So what do you do to silence it? You try to demonize them.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience?
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. William, I would like to ask after that disheartening massacre in New Zealand Mosque, even I think this is a perspective of white supremacy that their president, I don't forgot her name, she's showing that whatever happened was so bad, and she's showing towards more, getting more towards the Muslim, and they are doing something like around the mosque and getting out the mosque. People, even in Pakistan, they are saying, I'm from Pakistan, they are saying, what else do you want from that people? I think this also is an aspect of white supremacism. Like if a Muslim country, something happens that, they will have sanctions about, like millions of the sanctions about that. But as it happened in that country of the white peoples, they are saying, okay, they are apologizing, what else do you want? I think this is more like of white supremacy in itself. What do you think about that?
Well, indeed, the Prime Minister of New Zealand has been standing firm against white supremacy and has been basically showing all kinds of support to the Muslim community in New Zealand. And the question here is whether that is enough. Obviously, in the context of New Zealand, she's trying to change policies with gun laws, and I've seen several reports where actual New Zealanders say this is not us. Because as you saw, New Zealand is probably one of the most peaceful societies on earth. Even though they killed the indigenous people, but after they were done with them, they became very nice. But when it comes to the current situation, we're talking about Muslims who are mostly refugees and immigrants, who came to a society that is mostly peaceful and have received them. And this is this person, twisted person who came to change that dynamics. If you read in his manifesto, what he's trying to do is actually incite a race war, incite a war, a religious race war against Islam and Muslims throughout the world, including, and he was hoping, and he mentioned Trump in the United States, because he thinks that's where it can really make a difference. And he's trying to reverse the tide of Muslim immigration to European countries, and he's trying to increase somehow the birth rate of Europeans. Obviously, these are not the ways to do it, but that's how we see and perceive the threat. Now, is that enough in terms of what they are doing? I think New Zealand is a very small peg in a whole scheme of things. New Zealand cannot change what's happening around the world, but there must be a worldwide phenomenon where, especially when it comes to popular culture and the media, this Murdoch guy is the billionaire that is poisoning millions and millions of people with his hateful programs throughout, starting with Fox News, but beyond. All these tabloids, most of them belong to him, and they exist in the English-speaking world I'm talking about, in the US, in England, in Australia, in New Zealand, and other places. They have to, the people have to confront them. You know, people have to take a stand that this kind of hate-filled propaganda and yellow journalism is not acceptable. Secondly, all those people who spew hate. You know, we're trying now, we have terrorist lists. Remember, we talked about this, the institutionalization of Islamophobia in life and government. We have terrorist lists. We need to create our own lists where we tell people that these people should be basically excommunicated from public speaking. I mean, we can do that as civil societies. You know, the Robert Spencers of the world, the Pamela Gillers of the world, those people who have been funded with millions of dollars so that they can poison other people's minds by presenting Islam in a way that will frighten people, that's full of hate and full of wrong information, and they're trying basically to create this. There's a whole movement in the US that's being funded by tens of millions of dollars to convince the Americans that somehow Sharia is creeping into American law. Just a few days ago, there was this person also on Fox News, even though Fox took a stand for the first time by suspending her. This is a judge who has her own program on Fox News. And she was basically saying that Ilhan Omar, the new congresswoman from Minnesota, that because she wears hijab, she was trying to impose Sharia in the US. I mean, there's a whole movement that now has I think, passed something like 25 states where you cannot have any kind of Sharia in law. Of course, that's unconstitutional. I mean, eventually that's what's going to happen. But that meant if you marry a Muslim woman and somehow people get divorced, or two Muslims get married and get divorced, and to enforce the contract because of the religious laws of Islam, they say that the judge cannot look at that because somehow this is tied to Sharia. It is that much of hatred and fear of Islam. Most of the people who are in the White House today, or in the National Security Council, are people who are enriched by taking very negative views and positions towards Islam and Muslims. And to the point where they have been quoted as some of them as calling for a religious war. So when you have all this coming together, it's very dangerous because that feeds into white nationalism and white supremacy that would lead eventually to these kind of acts where real victims, people who could actually suffer, and dozens of people are killed, including women and children.
All right. Thank you very much for attending this seminar. Furthermore, I would like to thank you, Dr. Sami Al-Arian, for his insightful presentation. If you still have not followed our center on Facebook or Twitter, please do so. It's basically facebook.com/CIGA Istanbul, and the same goes for Twitter. We announce all our seminars on both of the platforms, and we would be very happy to see you again in our events. Yes, just about to say that. So we have as our second international conference on Islamophobia in April, and it's going to be from the 12th to the 14th of April, and it's going to be quite interesting with a focus on the connections between Islamophobia and geopolitics. Many international scholars and speakers are joining us here at ISU. So indeed, everybody is welcome to attend the conference as well. There is more information about the program on our website, on our Facebook page, and on Twitter. I wish you...
One word.
Okay, Dr. Sami.
It's Friday evening on the 12th. That's when we have the first opening ceremony and the keynote speakers. I just want to say a word about the keynote speakers that we're going to have. One of them is probably one of the most important political scientists in the United States today. How many people here are political science majors? Okay, a few. All right, I think that would be a good opportunity for you to meet these people and to listen to them. And we're not going to get much opportunity here in Turkey to engage such scholars. And she's coming here for the first time, obviously, to address people in Turkey. And she will be speaking about this clash of civilization. This is the ideology, this is the philosophy that started over a quarter of a century ago in the wake of the collapse of the Soviet Union as being the next enemy. And she will review that concept 25 years later. She is the one also who wrote this important book. It's called On the Muslim Question, that answered in this book many of the questions that relate to this rise of Islamophobia and to the rise of Islamic or white nationalism. So she was addressing in her book all that. She will come and address these issues with us. So we're very fortunate, and I hope we can come here and listen to her. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enes Özcan 0316